We're going to start off with Jeremy Vaeni, and Jeremy, over a decade ago, had a spiritual energy awakening, and he decided to come back from that to help open people to the choiceless choice. I hope I don't have to say that very often. For his book called Urgency, and Jeremy is an award-winning writer and columnist for UFO magazine, and the author of I Know Why the Aliens Don't Like Me. So, please welcome Jeremy Vaeni. I'm just going to stay here.
Thank you. Howley has spiritual experience, moves to the Big Island, news at 11, right?
I'm going to raise this. I'm going to really have to raise my tom comes up here.
And I'm going to sing into this if the jokes don't go over. So, it's weird to be me and to be standing here in front of you because I don't look the part of that introduction, certainly, and I oftentimes don't sound it. And that's, I think, probably why, if there's a reason it's important for a guy like me to have had an experience like that, I think it's because there's a lot of guys like me and gals like me who come from a generation of sort of cynical, funny, sarcastic people who don't think there's anything beyond that. So I speak that language, but I've had a different set of experiences, so I try to combine the two in my book. And basically what the experiences are, I was reading Jiddu Krishnamurti. Is anyone familiar with his work? Okay. So, oh great. So essentially Jiddu Krishnamurti is a man who was brought up in the Theosophy Society, which was sort of like, I don't know, like the Scientology of the 1800s. It was sort of this catch-all religious group that brought together different traditions from around the world and married them together. And then they came up with this, they had this guy, Charles Ledbetter, who was a clairvoyant, and he picked out of a crowd Jiddu Krishnamurti as a young boy and said, this boy is the next savior of mankind. Essentially he was plucked to be the second coming for the Theosophists. So they raised him that way because his father was a Theosophist. So he said, sure, go raise my kid. So they raised him to be the second coming. They had this whole religion around him, and his big Sermon on the Mount speech, as it were, was, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as any of this religious stuff. Tear it all down. Truth is a pathless land. That was sort of his famous catchphrase. And that's it. And so for the rest of his life, until like 1986, he went around the world speaking about this stuff, and he formed schools in California. So that was Krishnamurti, basically saying truth is a pathless land. This guy got it. This guy got it, and on his deathbed said, nobody in my lifetime has understood a word I've said. And it's interesting because now you can see on YouTube, you go back and you watch these videos of him with people like Hussein Smith, and, just seminal figures, David Bohm, a physicist. And they get it somewhat intellectually, but they don't get it. It's like they don't get what he's saying because there's a nuance to what he's saying. And essentially what he's saying is that there's no such thing as consciousness evolution. There is total transformation or not. And I guess sort of what I've added to that, not added to that, but what I've understood from that is that when you have an experience that is the totality, when you have the experience of the all, when you come back to normal and you try to talk to people about it, you're normal. You're normal again, and you're trying to take this timeless thing and you're trying to fit it into time. You're trying to take this, this monster of an experience that was just you, and you're trying to make it conceptual. And so when you do that, you end up breaking it down into things like morality, into things like parables, into, all the stuff that we know and love from religious traditions, or from gurus, or from any of this stuff, or meditation, or yoga. If anyone does yoga, I'm sure everybody here pretty much does yoga or meditation or some sort of form of that. That all comes from this state of wholeness. In that state of wholeness, you're no longer just you. You are, if you want to put it pseudoscientifically, non-local. If you think of yourself as a self, as a localized entity going through time, in this state of the allness, that's just an aspect. And in that state, these things come to you. So if you've ever wondered where, for instance, acupuncture yoga, meditation, where these things come from. These aren't invented things. These are things that come through you when you're open to them, essentially, when you're not you. But when you bring them back, when you become you again, you come off that mountaintop, and you try to talk to people about it, it breaks down into systems and rules and all this crap. And then that's what we live by. And then we try to achieve that, right? And we try to go, okay, how do I get there? How do I get that thing that this person just had? The sort of joke of it is, the paradox of it is, there is no how. It's just the dissolution of self, which is the part, leads you to the whole. Sort of become that. And Krishnamurti kept trying to explain this over and over and over again, and people just sort of were like, but how? And they couldn't get it. And I was sitting on my couch one day back in New York reading him, and I got it. And I got that, I think the thing that I got, that was sort of my final illusion, was that I am still me. I'm still this searcher, right? Like I've done the work. I've done all of the psychological work. I've done the spiritual work. And yet I still have an identity, and that identity is the guy who's going to get it. And I think this is the problem that a lot of sort of New Age people have, which is they think they're on a spiritual path. They think they're going to get somewhere. And because they're on that path and say their neighbor isn't, they think that makes, that there's something transcendent about that, and there isn't. The path is an illusion too. The path is you. And so when I got that, when I was like, okay, I'm now the guy who's like sitting on a couch reading Krishnamurti trying to get it, that's when it sort of went off. The light bulb went off. And then I don't want to do any spoilers for the book, but that's when a whole new thing took over. And I saw this thing up close and personal. I had the big sort of I am experience. It wasn't right away, it was through a process. But in any event, so that happened. And so when it happened, I immediately knew that I had a choice, which was, do you dissolve into that, or do you come back to normal and talk about it? And I decided to come back to normal and talk about it. And I don't know how real that choice is. Maybe there isn't really one. But it certainly felt like there was one. And so that's what I did. So my contention is, or I guess my question is, and what I try to do in this book, is ask, is that something, that I amness, that big all experience, is that something that is just an experience that you visit and then come back from? Or is it actually a stage of consciousness? Is it the next thing that we're supposed to actually be? Is this what humans are for? Are we to be the part that reflects the whole, that invites the whole into the world? And if we are and we're not doing it, well, then what are we doing here? So I try in the book to make an experiment where I'm trying to shut up the brain, essentially the reader's brain. And I'm sorry I'm nervous, but I'm used to public speaking, but not usually about this. It's usually about sillier things. So I'm trying to shut up the reader's brain by just giving all these sort of epiphanies and insights that came to me during the course of this, because part of what happens when you become healthy, if you want to put it that way, which is ironic, given, I'm not exactly dieting. But when you become healthy, you get intellectual as well as spiritual, as well as, psychological, situations where these things come to you. So I put them down on paper and I said, okay, I'm going to put these on paper. I'm going to give you no wiggle room. As a reader, you're going to have no wiggle room. Your brain is going to see these things and go, that's better than what I had. That's actually more true than what I just knew about life, the universe, and everything. And so if that holds, then maybe the brain chatter stops. Maybe the brain chatter stops, and maybe you have that moment where the light bulb goes off, and something new takes place. Probably not. Probably a failed experiment, because again, we've had thousands of years of this, and practically nobody gets it. But someone's got to, damn it. And let me just give you one more just sort of concrete example of sort of that there's no evolution of consciousness. If you think about 2012, which is something I swore I'd never talk about, which is probably why I'm talking about it. If you think about the origin of the whole us being as white people, as Westerners, or whatever you want to put on that, taking this and being interested in it was decades ago. And it was that there is this date, 2012, December 21st. And like clockwork, something's going to happen on that date. Right? You remember this? This was the big thing. It's either going to be an extinction or, a spiritual upgrade or something. And then as it sort of came nearer, and it was like the 90s, we were like, well, maybe it's a process. Maybe it's not that date is specifically the thing that's going to happen. Maybe that's just sort of a marker. And then as it became even closer and it got into 2012, it's like, well, maybe that's happening right now, and we're all feeling it. And but there's also this 2021 or this 2016 or this 2030. We've also got this calendar wrong, maybe. Maybe we don't understand my calendar. All this stuff just sort of push it away and push it away. But that's not the point. The point is this, that the mindset that latches onto a 2012 type thing is the mindset that rebels against the church and the established order. And they go, we don't like that Judeo-Christian stuff. We don't like judgment. But they still have this seed, this kernel of that in them because that's our culture, right? And so we latch onto this thing and we make a judgment out of it. We keep pushing this judgment day forward and forward and not acknowledging that that's what we're doing, creating this new sort of judgment day, by which we either evolve or go. And so, what is that an example of? It's an example of transference. It's not that the people who don't believe in orthodoxy are any more or less enlightened than the people who do. It's just simply that they've transferred one to the other. And that's how we keep going with this for another 1,000 years, for another 1,000 years. And I just wonder if we can get off that wheel. I don't think my book is going to get us there. I'm not that egocentric, but it's my shot anyway. So there's that. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
He's so vaeni. He's so vaeni.
Aloha, it's Jeremy Vaeni, and I'm doing this here. He's So Vaeni live. I'm hoping that whatever comes next ties into what I just played. It's actually not about my book, any of this, but I put that up because I thought I thought somewhere in that Kona Stories thing, I talked about, well, I guess I sort of did at the end, but that 2012, and that was from 2012, that 2012 um, is it. I guess maybe I didn't explicitly state that there, but that basically somewhere back then, in some speech somewhere, or a Paratopia maybe, I talk about how there's no one coming to save us, and like that's the end of legit prophecy. Like there are other people who tried to like sort of jumpstart the engine of prophecy after 2012 came and went, but that was pretty much it. And you could feel, at least I could feel, sort of the clamp down of that, like the door closing in the psyche of so many people who had put their faith in a big savior event or a big end times event that's out of their hands. Um, and the beginnings of us really going completely nuts. And there are a lot of factors to us going nuts: socioeconomic, disinformation, media, et cetera, corporate. Um, but there's also the thing of so many people have this like fundamentalist notion in whatever religion they believe in, of a savior coming to get us and help us out and alleviating us of our responsibilities, giving us purpose and meaning. And um, rats, that didn't happen. So are are we living in the aftermath of that, uh, in some way, or is that a contributing factor to, sort of the decay of the empire, as it were? Um, so I'm hoping. I have not watched this video that we're about to watch together. I don't think I can. Normally with this show, if you're not familiar with the show, I start and stop videos and I comment. This is a short video, and I'm going to just play it through because I'm afraid if I stop it, it will start over at the beginning because I think that's kind of how this works on this system. Um, so we're going to watch it together and then comment on it, and we'll see if I make fun of it or not. It's something that my wife this morning saw it come across her feed, and she read to me the title and said, that looks interesting. I was like, ooh, why don't I do a He's So Vaeni? So I have not watched any of this, but we'll see. We'll see what happens here. I found it an intriguing subject. Um, let's go, and let's hope this works. That'd be good, right? So far, so good. Okay, here we go.
Stephanie Potts says, some days it feels like they're trying to trick God into end times. Why don't they know you can't fool God? I could be wrong. You know, Stephanie, this is going to be the last thing we say today. Okay? I'm going to open that book. I'm going to open Revelation. Because in Revelation, as many of you know, it is the story of end times, right? It's sort of the story of the beginning of the end. And in it, you hear about the beast, and you hear about the second beast, and you hear about the whore of Babylon, and you hear about the plagues, and you hear about the riders, and you hear about all this stuff, and Jesus coming from a cloud, swinging a great sword, and how armies will clash, and not for nothing, but I don't have it here. I was just pointing to my books in the side. A lot of Revelation is being seen through the lens of the Left Behind series, especially in the last, say, 20 years, 25 years. A lot of eschatology, study of end times, thoughts of end times is seen through the lens of the Left Behind series and books like it, stories like it, where God is going to bring about the end and people will be raptured up, and then people are going to have to fight. And often, I'm not sure, again, it's one of those things, it often comes down to the people will do God's work. Well, Revelation is actually really clear that God will do God's work. But it does, coming back to Stephanie's point, it does seem as though some Christians are trying to force God's hand. They're trying to do things, and they're trying to align things in such a way that that end times will come. The times of Revelation will come. That the Left Behind series will become real, right there in front of us. The thing that they're forgetting, these people who are trying to bring about Revelation, the thing that they're forgetting is that at the beginning of the book of Revelation, a bunch of the churches in the Mediterranean, those early churches, they all get a message. And those messages are not terribly complimentary. Those messages are really offered to these churches so that they can get their house in order. They're offered to these churches to say, listen, I see you. I see how you're behaving. I see what you're doing. I see what you're not doing. I see how you're failing. There's one, good job. Maybe two, good job. Okay. There's little sprinkles of positivity in there. I see how you're doing this. And then it usually moves to, but I'm asking you to do that. These messages are there not to tell the churches they're ready for end times. They're there to tell the churches they are absolutely not ready for end times, and they need to get themselves ready. That they need to begin living in a very particular way. That they need to let go of certain things and they need to embrace others. That they need to stop doing things and need to adopt the idea of doing others, the practice of doing others. I wonder for those for those Christians and those churches who are believers, that they can force God's hand, that they can, as Stephanie says, trick God into end times. I wonder if their house is in order. Because that's what we're actually supposed to be focused on. Jesus tells us in the gospel, I don't know when it's happening. Don't worry about it. Focus on what's in front of you. We are told, one of his parables is about how everybody goes running off, and not everybody is equipped. Not everybody has prepared, right? So, what is it? The story of the bridegroom. The bridegroom is coming, but not all the maidens stop to put oil in their lamp. And when the time comes, they say, "Oh, can I have some oil?" And the maidens who are ready says, "No, I don't have any extra." The ones without the oil are left behind, right? That mentality of we're supposed to be ready for that moment. Not ready in the sense that, oh, I know it's coming. Ready in the sense that we are living as Jesus asks us to live. That's our focus. Is, was, and always will be our focus. Are we living as individuals and as communities as Jesus asks us to live, calls us to live, expects us to live? Are we living in ways that the Spirit is producing fruit within us, producing fruit that the whole world sees, or not? Because we can say end times are coming. Okay. Are you ready? Have you been living that way? Have we been practicing that? Is living that way the focus of our lives? Is it our purpose? I mean, we could say, I want to live in such a way, I want my church to be operating in such a way that I don't get one of those letters. I want my church to be living according to God's call in their lives in such a way that we don't get a message from Jesus saying, straighten up, fly right, square yourself. I don't know when the end's coming, but I don't know when the end's coming, but I sure as hell know I'm not going to waste any of my time trying to bring it here faster, because I'm not ready. My church isn't ready. My community isn't ready. We're working on it. We're practicing. We're doing, I think in many cases, we're doing what it is that Jesus would ask us to do. But by no stretch am I so arrogant to believe that I can stop focusing on the things that Jesus tells us all to focus on and shift my focus, trying to, again, as Stephanie so wonderfully puts it, trying to trick God into end times. It's out of my lane. It's out of your lane. It's outside of the purview of every single Christian on this planet. None of us have the extra time that we can spend worrying about that, let alone trying to bring it about. Amen.
Okay. So, I'm not Christian, but that's about as good as it gets, I think, for the Christian thought on this. I apologize. I can see the chat, but for some reason it's not coming up on the screen. This worked in rehearsal. So just know that if you're texting to me in at least YouTube chat, maybe YouTube and Facebook, I can see it. It's just not on the screen. So I actually don't. This might be the first He's So Vaeni where I don't have a problem with anything that was said. So I'll just add to it because it is interesting that we live in times where, they're talking about Christians trying to create an end times, essentially controlling God or whatever. But kind of everyone's up to it at this point. I mean, just think how weird it is that in America, we've got competing, or not, I don't know if they're competing or just sort of symbiotically working together, cults. You've got the MAGA cult, which is the main one in charge, which is fascism. You've got Tulsi Gabbard is, head of intelligence, and she's been a lifetime member of a cult. Um, you've got, Elon Musk and the Doge nonsense, which is part of a technocratic cult that, and I don't remember what Tulsi's believes in, but so that's why I'm glossing over Tulsi's because I don't remember exactly what they believe in, but they've got a cult leader and it's an actual cult. But Elon believes in the let the tech bros take everything over and make us bot slaves, essentially. Then you've got well, you've it seems to me as though maybe Trump got a little butt hurt by Putin, and so he's sort of trading off Putin for Netanyahu, and so now you've got the Zionist death cult that wants to bring us into nuclear war, um, and so you've got all of these sorts of culty factions working together. And do I have to do a disclaimer when I say Zionist cult? I'm not talking about Judaism, that in fact the Zionists who have co-opted Judaism to try to make them synonyms, like if you're anti-Zionist, you're anti-Jewish. And it's like, no, sorry, that's not how that works. But anyway, in any event, you've got all of these competing death cults racing to the bottom. And um, it's not just Christians. And it's because we're sort of purposeless and meaningless at this point. It's like, my feeling on it is, of course, if you're familiar with anything I've ever said, is that because of the pollution and stuff that we've done to Earth, the fracking and all of that stuff that we continue to do, Earth is about to just say flick to us, and we feel that. We feel that like insects, ants. I always use this analogy: ants before a storm. We're like scurrying about. We sense the storm coming, and we're trying to like shelter in. And part of what that means is like um, tribalism in the worst ways. Racism, essentially. And that's one of the ways. Um, but it's Well, I wrote something down here. I wrote a little note to myself. What we want in all these death cults is to defer meaning and purpose to a higher power, essentially to project all of our duty, all of what we're missing in our purpose onto a higher power so that we don't have to take responsibility for how we feel and how we act in this moment, for how meaningless we've made ourselves and our culture. And essentially, when you make up your culture, which is what we've done, you fill it in with whatever it is you desire. But ultimately, what we desire, ironically, is to not be making it up. We want to be connecting with nature, and beyond that, we want to be in oneness. But we have deluded ourselves. So let's back up. Westernized mind and other minds, but westernized mind, let's pick on us because I know us. Um, Let me pull up the chat just in case anyone jumps in with anything. Westernized mind, it's funny because this is something that my wife and I have been watching this, a documentary called Eternal Song, and it's premiering or premiered last week. And so with the premiere, they've done a bunch of free sort of conversations with various people, some of whom were in the movie, some of whom weren't. And it's talking to indigenous people about um, how did we get to where we are, where a bunch of disconnected people, disconnected from Earth, decided to sort of do colonialism and take over? And like, how do life forms get to the point where they're so selfish and disconnected from life that they will kill life? They will kill themselves, which is what we're doing now. How did we get this way? We're life. Like, think about it. We're life. And yet we're anti-life. We're living in anti-life times. Um, and so how did it get that way? And it's sort of exploring that. And so one thing that you'll hear from pretty much every member of an indigenous culture in this movie is that culture comes from the earth, that we must live with earth and not on earth, but that culture comes from the earth. And westernized culture doesn't come from earth. It comes from books. It comes from literacy and the invention of a story. And so if your culture comes from earth, you're getting natural direction. You're living naturally, and your direction is always going to be true in that sense. But when you come from the headspace, you're just making that shit up, right? So we live in a making that shit up culture. But and so in our making that shit up culture, we've said, like in the Bible, like all this animals and plants and stuff. This is all here for us to trounce. It'd be great if we're good stewards, but it's not necessary. These are all objects. They're things, and they're here for us. And that is so not right that it doesn't feel right. Like all of this society that we've built up on these lies of disconnection, we know it. Like we're did you ever see Total Recall? Right, where you got to inject the guy inside the delusion to try to wake up the hero, and be like, hey, you're dreaming. You got to wake up now. We're constantly doing that to ourselves. We're constantly that guy in everything we do. Pretty much everything we do is um, uh, is a wake up, metaphorically a wake up call. Not literally, like our literal invention of like the internet is what it is. I don't have to explain it to you. You're on it right now. But metaphorically, we are talking about our being disconnected from one another. If we choose to see it that way, we can see it as a wake up call out of technology, not further into it. Um, and so we're constantly talking to ourselves about how disconnected we are from each other. And even further, the oneness that we are not living as. We've got it as a hypothetical that some people talk about. We've got it in physics that some people talk about, but it's not directly who we are, most of us. And so we're constantly, because we're delusional and screwed up, we take that what's missing, the thing that translates in within us as something that is missing inside. We take that and we try to, in our consumer culture, consume. We try to fill the hole, right? We've all heard this a million times. But more than that, even, we are trying to invent our way to a substitute oneness because we're so divorced from that being a reality that we don't think it is reality. And it is reality whether we are divorced from it or not. It's just not our first person identity as the oneness. It is an experience that you may have as a peak experience or a spiritual experience, or it is a a third person experience of something that you like read about and have knowledge about, but it doesn't really do anything for you. Um, so these are the ways that we sort of take it in and translate it into our disease. Um, but further, like we, you know, the ultimate mistaking that in our disease is we want to be God, even if we're not saying it. But that's what we're doing. We want to be God. So we're controlling our own destinies now, or at least we are pretending to. Like the fix is in, right? We keep going the way we're going, and then, sort of mechanically, Earth is going to react the way she's reacting, and then destroy us in the process, or, a large portion of us, society as we know it. So we want to get there first. We want to destroy it first. And we want to, at the same time, somehow put that on a higher power and say, this is all God's doing. I feel guided, or I'm just going to wait and see what happens. I'm not going to participate. What power do I have? All of these are means of allowing it to happen, the awful thing, or participating in trying to push it forward. In all of it is an avoidance of looking at who we are and why we do what we do. So, um, yeah, that's all. That's where we are. As we, you know, tiptoe into, should we use nuclear bombs on Iran for no reason? But they're the savages and the bad guys, and Muslims bad and evil, and you know, um, it's sheer nonsense. It's a nonsense world that we're living in, and it's all because we don't want to look at us and our pain. And in the movie Eternal Song, they talk about the pain going back to that original disconnection, and that's true. Um, and so the way they talk about it is that, at least one way in which they talk about it, is that the Roman Empire and the church sort of bowled over the indigenous peoples of Europe. They did that first. And so, you know, they're saying maybe it's time to go back to your European roots beyond the Christianity and that. Like, what was the so-called paganism that was in the lands that you originally came from? And then that's how you reconnect with Earth and with your ancestors and all of that. And that is certainly a way to go, um, and maybe an important one. But also beyond that is or with that is the onenessy thing, um, which actually takes the death of self, not the recontextualization of self from a fake autonomous, selfish, brainiac person into a relational heart person who understands him or herself as part of the large tapestry of all creation, all existence. Um, that is necessary, but let's not stop there, because that is still corruptible. It was corruptible to be in the beginning. That's how we got here. And if it's true that this is all cyclical, and that, like, for instance, I've said before, Teokusin Ghost Horse of the Lakota has said they've been where we are, you know, and so presumably, if we survive ourselves, we will be the wise ancestors, and probably the subjugated, enslaved, and tried to be genocided ancestors of the next bunch of people who are just like us, you know? So can we stop that cycle? Uh, can we stop saying that this is what human beings are? First of all, let's get over the evolution thing. And that's a Western construct. We're not evolving psychologically, even if physically we are. We're just repeating ourselves over and over and over again for thousands of years. So there's no spiritual evolution. That's nonsense. So there's just pure transcendence in a moment. And I've said this before too, transcending from brain person to heart person feels like that is the big enlightenment experience, the big onenessy thing. And it's not. And it's something that indigenous people don't need to go through. So that's your clue that it's not. It's something that we need to, like, that's just getting healthy. Um, and then once you're healthy, I mean, that is a good, step to do. I mean, you got to be healthy to be able to see the necessity of complete silence, not quietude, not I'm going to try to shut up through meditation or prayer or sitting silently and navel gazing because that feels good, or because I heard that that will bring me to some peak experience or some Buddhic plane or something. But no, just silence for silence's sake, because that is where you will find your true face. Oh, yes. And by your, I mean not you. I mean the true face that all of our masks are covering. Um, so we need to be there. And we need to be there as a permanent state, not as an experience that you have and then take back to your people and just write about and talk about forever and ever like I'm doing. We need to all be what we are, be who we are. We need to be the oneness. Um, and then see what happens in terms of quote unquote evolution. But until we take that first leap off the karmic wheel here, the ever spinning wheel of good and bad decisions through what we consider to be free will, but which is just mental illness, making the same decisions in different guises over and over and over again, and then bitching about it, and then trying to put the end result, which is our destruction and demise, onto some invisible person in the sky. Why don't we stop doing that? How does that sound? Um, and not live like a Christian, like this man is saying. Although, you know, uh, that to me is still, it's divisive, even on its best day. And um, if we're going to continue to live mentally ill, then it's great to have best days. So if you're going to continue with the Christianity, sure, go ahead. Listen to this guy. He's got it. But it's time to put down all of the facades. We don't need them. We're not them. They are a defense mechanism against what we truly are. Um, so let's get there. All right. That's been He's So Vaeni. If anyone has any questions or anything, I don't even know if anyone's listening, honestly. But if you are, and if you have any questions or comments or anything, um, you got like 10 seconds, and then I'm saying goodbye. I do want to do another He's So Vaeni at some point that is live. I think I want to do it live. Um, because I found a video, and it's quite long, so it'll be an extended He's So Vaeni. But looking at Jiddu Krishnamurti in talks with, um, can't remember his last name. His first name. His last name is Salk, and he is the inventor of penicillin. Is that right? Or no, the polio vaccine. He invented the polio vaccine. And Jonas, is it Jonas or Jodas? Jonas, I think it's Jonas Salk. Anyway, it's a conversation from the early '80s, and it might as well be a time machine. You might as well be talking about now. They're talking about AI and computers and what this is doing to us. And it's just interesting to see Jiddu Krishnamurti, Truth is a Pathless Land guy, talking to a humanist about, sort of life, the universe, and everything. And what's interesting to me is Salk is a genius, but intellectual genius doesn't give you the ability to see beyond yourself, or apparently even yourself, in conversation. Like, he simply can't allow himself to hear what Krishnamurti is saying for any longer than it takes to agree with him. It's the age-old trick of, oh yeah, I see what you're saying, and then immediately afterwards going right back to your old scripts, because you don't want it to break through, because to break through you is to kill you, right? We're talking about the death of self. If you honestly had an epiphany that was like the necessity of you not being there, you're in the way, as a seeker of that which you seek. If you truly got that epiphany, you would be uprooted and gone. So how do you deal with that when you're super smart and you're hearing it and it makes sense to you? Well, we're going to watch that and discuss it at some point in the future. So look forward to that. Spick says, I am listening. Thank you, sir or madam. Thank you. Um, that's all I got for now. I guess if there are no questions, I'll say goodbye. Thanks for listening to this. Thanks for watching, and I will probably not pop up surprising you with the Krishnamurti thing. I'll probably try to give you fair warning beforehand so you can break out the popcorn. All right. Take care, y'all. Peace. Is that possible? Can we have peace? Is that still a thing? Or is that just some concept floating around that's like for pussies? You hear that? That is a gecko. I guess it was answering me. I don't know if you heard it, but it was a gecko was answering me. It's like, not for pussies, it's for geckos too. Please have peace, everyone, because you're killing us. All right.